Hey folks, and welcome back to another Division 2 video. In this one, I'm going to go over one of my go-to solo builds that I've been asked about a few times now, as well as the exotic pistol that pulls it all together, and how you can get it. Let's jump into it. So this is a build I tend to run solo for a range of different activities, from just chilled out farming to speedruns, with it having a load of survivability, damage, and crowd control rolled into one if you play it right. I like to go quite in depth with build videos, so in this one I'll go through the brands, talents, attribute distribution, weapons, and how to play it. Also later on in the video I'll run you through how you can get your hands on the exotic pistol that really makes this build. I also use quite a few named pieces in this build, so I'll also be telling you how you can get them, as well as some alternative pieces you can use until you can get the named pieces to drop. To start with, I want to talk about the brand pieces used for this build and the talents, then move on to attribute distribution, weapons and skills a little bit later on. First, for the mask, it uses the named Douglas and Harding mask, Punch Drunk. This comes with its own special attribute of 20% headshot damage. And with it being a D&H piece, we also get the extra 20% pistol damage from the brand bonus. If you don't have the Punch Drunk mask, these can be farmed in the open world or missions by looking for D&H or mask targeted loot. But for now, if you don't have a Punch Drunk, a standard D&H mask with a minor attribute rolled to headshot damage will give you very similar results, with only a 10% loss on headshot damage. On the chest, it uses Chain Killer. This is a named Walker Harrison Co vest, which comes with the 5% weapon damage for the one piece bonus, and the perfect Headhunter talent. After killing an enemy with a headshot, your next weapon hit within 30 seconds deals an additional 150% of that killing blow's damage. Damage is capped at 800% of your weapon's damage. This is raised to 1250% if your headshot damage is greater than 150%. This is a very strong talent for chaining together one-shot kill headshots, which really is the goal of this build. If you don't have the Chain Killer vest, a normal Walker Harrison Co vest with Headhunter will have pretty much the same effect with a little less damage. Chain Killer can be farmed from the open world and missions by going for Walker Harrison Co or chest targeted loot. For the holster, I've used one piece of Cheska, which gives us 10% critical hit chance for the one piece brand bonus. And the backpack used in this build is the named Providence piece, the Gift, with the one piece bonus from Providence giving us 15% headshot damage and the talent Perfect Vigilance. Increased total weapon damage by 25%, taking damage disables this buff for 3 seconds. Probably one of the best DPS backpack talents in the game, giving a huge boost to damage. This is also very effective with any build that takes advantage of a shield, with hits to the shield not counting for your character as taking damage, keeping the buff active unless you get hit from the sides or behind. The difference between Perfect Vigilance and the normal Vigilance talent is that the perfect version is disabled for 1 second less after taking damage, so the damage output is exactly the same, it's just slightly more optimal to be using the perfect version. So a normal Providence backpack with Vigilance will do the exact same damage as its perfect alternative, and depending on the attributes, might even be preferable. If a standard Providence backpack with Vigilance has overall better rolls in its attributes than the Gift backpack, it would be much better to go with the higher rolls in the standard piece. If you do want to get yourself the Gift named Providence backpack, these don't drop from the open world or PvE missions, so there's only a few limited ways you can pick one up. The first and most effective method is to farm in the Dark Zone, and they also have a chance to drop from conflict caches. But if you are a completely non-PvP player, there is still a way you can get one, because these do drop from named caches which can be earned through season activities and from the Summit Challenge rewards. For the gloves, it uses the named Petrov Contractor's Gloves. These come with 8% damage to armor as the special attribute, and with damage to armor being a multiplicative damage type rather than additive, For the most part, it ends up being worth losing the brand set bonus, but only by a small amount. You can easily swap these out for either a pair of Walker and Harrison Co. gloves, giving you that 5% damage to armor, plus an extra minor attribute, or a pair of Grupo gloves for an extra 15% critical hit damage. Either of these would be great substitutes, with only a very minor damage loss. But if you do want a pair of Contractor's gloves, these can be farmed in the open world or in missions, just by looking for Petrov or glove targeted loot. And finally for knee pads, I've used the named Overlord's knee pads, Fox's Prayer. Even after these having a slight nerf to their special attribute, they still remain one of the best damage pieces of gear you can have on a build, coming with an extra 8% damage to targets out of cover as their special attribute. Like damage to armor, damage to targets out of cover is multiplicative damage, but unlike damage to armor, it also applies to both armor and health, as long as your target isn't currently in cover. And for the One Piece Overlord, we do get an extra 10% rifle damage, which will come in handy with rifles, with them also working great with Headhunter. If you don't have the Fox's Prayer yet, like Contractor's gloves, One Piece Walker Harrison Co. or a piece of Grupo would be decent alternatives, but I would recommend the Fox's Prayer knee pads over either. And like the Contractor's gloves, these can be farmed in the open world and from missions, by looking for Overlord or knee pad targeted loot. And for the mod slots, I have headshot damage in all three. With the attributes in this build, you want to prioritise headshot damage over anything else, then crit chance, then crit damage. This is because ideally we want every shot to land as a headshot, so headshot damage will be the most consistent and serve us the best here, with our goal to get it over 150% to make the most of Headhunter on the chest. Next, start building into crit chance before crit damage, up to 60%, which is the hard cap of critical hit chance. Anything over this will be wasted. This is to increase the strength of our one-shot headshots. With this specific build, it's best to hit low crits often than a few high crits, with more of the damage coming from headshot damage, and headshot and critical hit damage are additive to each other. Now onto the weapons. Ideally this build is run with one weapon, and that's your pistol. And the pistol that really makes this build what it is the exotic pistol, the Regulus. The Regulus comes with a base damage of 282.1k, and with this build a total damage of 697.6k. It has an RPM or rounds per minute of 160, and a magazine size of 6 rounds. The attributes it comes with are pistol damage and headshot damage, and for its exotic talent it comes with Regicide. Headshot kills create a 5 meter explosion, dealing 400% of the weapon's damage, and applying a bleed to all enemies hit. As you can imagine, this combined with Headhunter plus all our stacked headshot damage is extremely strong. Plus this pistol works great for crowd control, dealing the additional explosion and bleed. The only problem with the Regulus is it's a bit of a grind to get one. If you don't know how to do that, here's a very quick how to get the Regulus. First, you'll need to complete the Iron Horse raid on normal difficulty. This will unlock 2 projects that you'll need to complete, the Foundry Bulwark project and the Future Initiative project. You will need to complete both of these projects in full, which requires you get 1 piece of every gear slot for the Foundry Bulwark and Future Initiative gear sets. For the mask, holster, gloves and knee pads, these can be found anywhere in the game that you can farm these gear sets. But for the chest and backpack pieces, they only drop in Iron Horse. If you're lucky, these may all drop for your first run, or if you let the other players in your raid group know you're looking for them, they may also be able to drop them for you. After you've done this, you'll have to complete 2 more projects that want you to gather some materials and high-end gear. Once you've finished these 2 projects, you'll earn all of the crafting blueprints for Foundry Bulwark and the Future Initiative, including the chest and backpack blueprints. And you'll unlock your final project, the Regulus Project. This one is much easier. You just need to do 1 more full run of Iron Horse, including opening the chest after the last boss. On this run, every boss you defeat is guaranteed to drop an exotic component needed for this project, with the very last piece dropping from the crate at the end after the last boss. Once you've finished this and gathered all the components, now all you need is a Police Magnum and to head to the crafting bench and craft your Regulus. But if you don't want to go through that grind, you can swap the Regulus out for a few other pistols, but you would be sacrificing a lot of damage and utility. A few pistols I'd consider as alternatives is the Orbit, a Dark Zone exclusive revolver that comes with perfect finisher, or an M1911 with finisher as the talent. If you wanted a little bit more survivability, the named pistol, the TDI Card Custom, gives you an extra skill tier while it's in hand, giving our shield, which I'll mention in a moment, an extra boost. But like I said, swapping out the Regulus would be a massive nerf to this build, and I would recommend farming for it. Even if you're not usually a raid player, it is really worth it. For the primary and secondary weapon, these are completely up to you and what you prefer to use. To get the most out of this build, I tend to use a classic M1A with Rifleman as its talent. Landing headshots stack a bonus of 10% weapon damage for 5 seconds, max stacks is 5. Additional headshots refresh the duration. Again, a great talent that works really well with Headhunter. And for the secondary, I use the named 1886 rifle, the Virginian. This comes with perfect boomerang. Critical hits have a 75% chance to return the bullet to the magazine. If a bullet is returned to the magazine, the next shot has 50% increased damage. This is another Dark Zone exclusive named item, but the standard version of the talent is still a strong option. But like I said, ideally, with this build, you'll be mostly using your pistol. For skills, this build should be using the Bulwark Shield. This will give it a ton of extra survivability, and with our main weapon being a pistol, it should be up as often as possible. And for the other skill, it's very much up to your own playstyle, but I often like to run with a Revive Hive or a Decoy, but this one is completely up to you. For the specialization, I go with the Technician. This is due to the extra skill tier just by having this spec equipped, which is going to give our shield some extra health, but just make sure your weapon damage is rolled into pistol damage and whatever weapon types you decide to go for your primary and secondary weapons, which for me was rifles. Now that we've covered the build, the components, and how it all synergizes, let's talk about the best way to play it. With this build, you should try and have your shield up as often as possible for maximum survivability. This will also give you more time to start lining up headshots, which you should be consistently aiming for. Hitting body shots, this is a strong pistol build, but the headshots are what really makes it special and stand out from the rest, with easy one-shot headshots as well as the extra explosive damage to NPCs within 5 meters of your kill. It's also the ultimate build for camping at NPC spawn points. If you can see where they're coming from, this means you can start putting in headshots, and as you kill NPCs, you'll also be doing the maximum amount of damage to the NPCs around your target, with the explosive damage caused by the Regulus Pistol, and with them being in a tight group. This build also shines in solo content. This is because in a group, 2 things come into play that make it a little bit more difficult to hit those headshots. First, in a group of 3 or 4, the Division 2 has quite an aggressive NPC health scaling, so it starts to become difficult to chip away at your first target in order to get that headshot kill to proc Headhunter. But also, on top of that, you're now competing for kills, and if you're not getting the headshot kill, Headhunter doesn't proc, and you also miss out on the explosion from the Regulus. Overall, this is a fantastic build, and I hope you have a lot of fun with it, but that should be everything you need to know to put this build together for yourself. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe for more Division 2 content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.